ranking every single Premier League club's transfer window, but with a little bit of a twist, focusing more on the financial aspects and how well have the clubs spent and recouped money over the course of this transfer window. Look at this. This is the net spend table you can see here, but it doesn't necessarily mean just because Bournemouth have recouped over 100 million euros that they are going to win the transfer window, because I'm focusing more on the financial aspects. I am still going to be focusing on footballing aspects and blending the two, focusing on both footballing merit as well as financial merit. So let's begin with Arsenal. Eze. The mood that he generated hijacking Spurs deal, it was a massive moment in the transfer window. Zubamendi and Gyökeres as well, great deals. Madueke, not convinced, in all honesty. I'm not convinced this one's going to work, but Norgard, I think that's a brilliant bit of business, in all honesty. He's a solid player and he's on the cheap too. Kept their fees reasonable for each player as well. They're not massively overpaying for each player. Still spent just under 300 million euros though, and it was a poor selling window for Arsenal. 10 million euros income. No big player losses though. For me, I'm putting this one down as a great bit of business, but it's still got plenty of pressure for Mikel Arteta because he needs to deliver a Premier League title considering the money that he's spent, not just in this window, in past windows as well. On to Villa. Poor window. They failed to qualify for the Champions League the year before. PSR restrictions has resulted in poor selling for Aston Villa, so it's no wonder their fans are going into this window and coming out of this window incredibly frustrated with what they've got left, and it's shown in the first few games of the season. They even tried to alleviate this selling the women's team. It's still not enough. Jacob Ramsey, late in the window. They didn't give themselves any chance to actually replace them with genuine quality. Evan Guzand, 30 million euros. Harvey Elliott, arguably, I think it's the best bit of business they've done, and that's on loan. A profit of 24 million euros, but at what cost? At what cost for Aston Villa is that profit? And I understand it's frustrating for Villa because they have to comply with PSR, but they could have done better things in that transfer window, in all honesty. Crap window for me. Right, Bournemouth. I thought this was a tough one, to be honest, because what is expected of them? They are overachieving right now. Zabani, Huijsen, Kerkez, all gone. The heart of their defence just completely kaput, completely uprooted and gone. So it was a difficult situation for Bournemouth, but they've sold well. With the big money coming in, have they replaced those players though? They're unproven, in all honesty. I think fans of Bournemouth would have wanted to have seen more spending, in all honesty, and given the fact that they lost the talent that they lost, they are unproven in quality. So I'm not convinced this is going to work out as a transfer window, but they do have Andoni Iraola, which for me I think is an incredibly top manager, and I think as a result of that, it can't be considered a crap window. They've made 100 million euros in profit. I still think it's been a reasonable window, but I'm putting this one in the penny pinching category for Bournemouth. Brentford, worrying window for Brentford. The spine of their team has been ripped out. Mbeumo, Visa, good money for them, but Norgard and Flecken, they are big losses. It's not as if Mbeumo and Visa aren't big losses either, but they were able to get big money for them, even though they've lost those goals. Mark Flecken and Christian Norgard, they are big losses. 22 million euros combined for those two. Understandably so, considering they are over 30, but it's what they meant to Brentford. It's a key component to how they've succeeded in the years. Thomas Frank as well is a huge loss. Huge loss for Brentford, as even that's not really technically part of the transfer window, but it's a big problem. Have they replaced the losses at Brentford? The goals in particular, I don't think they have. For me, Brentford, crap window. On to Brighton, the club known for great business. Maxim de Kuiper is a tidy little left-back. He's a very promising player from Club Bruges. Signed 3 teenagers. One's for the future, Brighton have done. High hopes for the big Greek centre-forward Kostelas. I think there's a lot of potential that what Brighton have signed there. Sold really well though. João Pedro is a big loss, but a net profit total of 75 million euros is pretty good going. I'm going to put Brighton in the risky spending for this one, mainly because it's Brighton and you just, they unearth gems. They know what they're doing. They're very capable, Brighton, in the transfer market. This time though, have they pushed it a little bit too far? Gone overly into the risky department for me? It's an unknown quantity what Brighton have signed, so that's for me why they have gone into the risky spending. Burnley, James Trafford, that was a massive loss. Trafford was most of their income, in all honesty, and the newly promoted sides, they need to spend. They have to spend big money. Brozier, Ugachukwu from Chelsea, that is minimal Premier League experience that they've signed there, but they have signed Premier League experience in Dubravka, between the sticks, and Manchester City, formerly Manchester City's Kyle Walker. I think that brings in experience, but is it the quality that they need? I'm not convinced for me, and I'm a bit worried about Burnley because I think there are other promoted sides that have spent a little bit wiser. So for me, I'm putting them into the risky spending. On to Chelsea. The optics of Chelsea has been very negative when it comes to transfer windows in terms of like spending excessive amounts of money, just bringing in a whole host of players. They're walking away with a net profit in a situation where they've improved their squad. So how can that not be elite business? João Pedro, already proving a top signing, oldest signing at 23 years old. So they're signing youth with a nice blend of quality as well. Liam Delap, what an amazing backup that is to João Pedro. Estevao, an unearthed gem, a brilliant signing he looks. Quality player. Look at who they've sold. Are they going to miss any of these players? I don't think they will. They've spent 328 million euros and they're coming away with a net profit. Spending that amount of money, improving their squad to what was already a trophy-winning squad, albeit, FIFA Club World Cup and the Europa Conference, still, they've upgraded their squad and they are walking away with a net profit, which I don't think any Premier League club can say this season. So for me, elite business for Chelsea. On to Palace, a very frustrating window for them. They wanted Europa League football, of course. Poor club management to not see that coming in. With the multi-club ownership situation, but they kept spending to a minimum as well. 55 million euros is all they've spent. Losing Eze is a big loss, but they are still coming away from this situation with a net profit of 17 million euros, which isn't too bad, but I think Palace fans will have wanted to see a lot more investment for Oliver Glasner to give him the tools that he needs to take Palace to the next level, because he's showcased by winning the FA Cup, something that they've never done in their history, getting into European football, albeit not quite the tournament they've probably deserved to be, in all honesty, just because of a paperwork mismanagement from the hierarchy of Palace has lowered their European standing. But I still believe Palace deserve to go to that next level. But have they made those right moves in the transfer market? I don't think they have, and I don't think they've committed enough. So for me, they're going into penny pinching. Everton. Now, albeit this one's about finance, I am focusing more on the footballing aspect of this one because there is spending, and I know I promised you a financial focus, but actually I think that sometimes you need to respect the players that have come in. Tyler Dibbling and Dewsbury Hall and Jack Grealish. They're proper David Moyes signings, those three. Brilliant business for Everton there to get excited about. And David Moyes being at the helm, I think it's going to take them to the next level with a new stadium as well. That can sometimes work against you, but seemingly they've hit the ground running. Everton doing really well. Splashing 129 million euros. That's not a huge amount of money. They haven't sold very well either, but there's some big wages off the books there at Everton. Big wages off the books. So for me, great business from Everton. Fulham, you got to feel sorry for them. Poor Fulham fans looking at the transfer market website like, Kevin! And that's it. That's it, really. Kevin. Haven't sold many either. Andreas Pereira, that's a loss. But I do think they had a decent side, Fulham. I still think they've come away with a squad. The fact that they haven't sold, albeit they haven't spent, it's not ideal. I think Fulham had the potential to go to another level and take it beyond what they currently have. I don't think they're going to go down. But when you're focusing on just the window itself, which is the whole purpose of this, not what you had before the window, which was a good squad, Premier League mid-table at least, it's still got to be considered a crap window. Leeds, not a terrible window. Good squad building in terms of quantity. Anton Stach looks like a tidy player. Longstaff solidifies the midfield in that midfield three alongside him. Calvert-Lewin on a free. You can't complain when he's for free. Okafor, he's a good backup to Nonto. Still think that they have not signed enough guaranteed goals for me, though. If you look at the goals that they have in the output department up front currently, have they added to it? No, I don't think they have. And I think they're going to struggle to keep clean sheets. And I think they're going to struggle to score goals. So Leeds are going to do well to stay up this season. So as a result of that, I think this is going to be a risky spending window for Leeds. Liverpool, headline grabbing Liverpool. 482 million expenditure is outrageous. Wirtz is warming up. He's not quite hit the ground running, let's be fair, but I think there is obviously a player there. I don't think there's any denying the quality of player that is there. But Ekitike, he looks ridiculous. I thought he was a good player, but he looks like he's absolutely taken to it like a duck to water in the Premier League. He looked brilliant, Ekitike, and it's annoying. It's It's very annoying as a Manchester City fan. I think the Isak deal as well, I think we were all hoping that wouldn't happen. If you're not a Liverpool fan, he now becomes the pantomime villain of the Premier League. Let's see how he handles that. You can't ignore the 219 million euros income, though. As much as I want to badmouth Liverpool for spending 482 million euros, you can't ignore the income. Luis Diaz, he's a big loss, but that's big money for a player that I think they're quite okay with losing. I don't think they're going to cry themselves to sleep at night losing Luis Diaz for that amount of money. I think they've done a reasonably good bit of business there. Missing out on Mark Gay, I still think they'll probably go in for him in January. But ultimately, Liverpool, they are building from a position of strength. You have to add context to the fact that they didn't spend any money in the previous transfer window where they went and won the league. They are spending their winnings now, Liverpool. And they have every right to spend their money because that's the money they've earned from recent winnings, which is a massive, massive blow as a Manchester City fan. And the talent, you can't ignore the talent and the income. They have spent massive. They've broken way over 200 million in terms of net spend, but they have still spent on the players. So while I promised you a financial focus, kind of similar to Everton, the players that they've brought in, that squad for the next 5 years, sorted. Barring a defender, sorted. So I've got to put them in elite business. Right, my club, Manchester City, off to a flyer. If we could have closed the transfer window in that first segment of the transfer window, I think Manchester City would have won the transfer window, in all honesty. Cherki, Reinders, Ryan Aït-Nouri, 125 million euros for a combined 125 million euros for those three players. That's an insane bit of business for Manchester City. Really, really good. Things went quiet a little bit. Sfera Nipan comes in. I think he was a good signing for Manchester City. Definitely one for the future. Donnarumma, plus the fact that he is one of 3 new goalkeepers to sign for Manchester City, is wild. Absolutely wild. To go in with 3 new goalkeepers, that in itself I think is crazy. But you can't ignore the quality that Donnarumma brings. But the question is remaining, what is he going to do with being a Manchester City player, a Pep Guardiola player? The style of play that Manchester City bring to the table as well is curious to see how he's going to fit in with this Manchester City side. I do think there's over-exaggerations with how he plays with the ball at his feet. I don't think he's as good as Edison. No one's saying that. But I certainly don't think he's as bad as people. So literally the words can't. He can't play with his feet. I don't think that's true either. I think there's plenty of middle ground between Edison and can't play football. Do you know what I mean? I think Donnarumma is very much in the middle of that. And at £30 million is a very good bit of business for arguably the greatest goalkeeper, well-rounded goalkeeper in the world. I do think we've massively missed out on a fullback, though. You can't ignore the fact that we have sold really well, considering the players, McAtee, Jan Couto, getting reasonably good fees for those types of players, but De Bruyne, Edison, Gundogan, huge losses, but they have been replaced. They've been replaced on paper, at least, and with a net spend of 136 million, for me, Manchester City have done a great bit of business. Right, on to United. The question remains, is there enough talent in that squad to justify the spending in particular? 250 million euros expenditure. Cunha and Mbeumo are good players, but are they great players? I'm not convinced. Sesko, Cunha and Mbeumo versus Grimsby. Those 3 players just stood out in the penalty shootout. 2 of them missing, and one of them didn't want to take a penalty until the latter stages when he was forced to, which showed a very poor attitude for me for someone who's going to be leading the line for Manchester United. So I was very surprised to see that Manchester United spent the money that they spent and still coming away with what is a better squad than what they had, but they've still got massive problems in terms of outgoings. The names are names that needed to go. Garnacho, that's a decent fee, not bad, because he's a bad egg, he's got a terrible attitude. Anthony is arguably the most embarrassing transfer cycle in Premier League history. Having to loan out Højlund, Rashford and Sancho, though, nobody wants to pay. Nobody wants to sign these players. So for Manchester United, I have to put them down as risky spending, because that is 250 million euros, is a huge outlay. And they have improved, but by what standard? They are nowhere near where they want to be. Newcastle. Remember, this is a focused video on finances, so while the image of Newcastle, it looks bad, their pulling power was pretty exposed to be not really there. They were rejected countless times throughout this transfer window. It turned out to be a pretty embarrassing transfer window for Newcastle, in all honesty, which is a shame because I feel sorry for the fans, in particular the whole Isak situation. They can't help that. That's just one player that threw his dummies out and threw his toys out of the pram. You know, it was an ugly situation for Newcastle. But how they've come out of this transfer window, what's left isn't bad at all. Like I said, Isak is obviously a big loss, but they've still gone and splashed €288 million and ended up with a net spend of €112 million, which isn't bad at all. Visa, Jacob Ramsey and Elanga, they are good signings. Good signings. Kind of similar to United though. Even though they're good signings, good players, are they the sort of signings that will take Newcastle to where they want to be? Breaking into that conversation for a title race, a Premier League title race. For me, no. So I'm going to put them in risky spending. Forest, very active window for Forest, keeping Morgan Gibbs-White, albeit seemingly like it was a bit of a gun to the head moment from Marinakis. Seemed like he was being forced to stay, in all honesty. But still, a quality player for me that I think is going to add to what they already had, plus what they've brought in. A nice blend of quality and quantity at Nottingham Forest. Lots of Premier League experience, Douglas Luiz and Zinchenko. Hugely promising signings like McAtee and Hutchinson. Elanga, he was a big loss, key for their transitions last season in the way they were able to bring the ball forward and accept they weren't having possession in the game, but kill the opposition on the break with the likes of Elanga. That's going to be a big loss. Bringing in €124 million for the players lost is really, really good business, to be honest. And a net spend of €112 million for Nottingham Forest, I've got to put that down as great business. Sunderland, it's just what was needed, in all honesty. A newly promoted side, they've just come up and they were miles off Leeds and Burnley. Miles away. So the gap between Leeds and Burnley, who both came up with 100 points each, they were miles away from those two sides, so they needed to spend, and they have done that, Sunderland. So I actually think they've given themselves the best chance out of those three sides to stay up with the spending that they've done. Kind of similar to Forest, a nice blend of quantity and quality. Premier League experience in Granit Xhaka, promising talent in Adingra and Diarra. Big losses in the outgoings, though, that aren't really spoken about when talking about Sunderland's transfer window. I think Bellingham didn't seem to want to give it a go in the Premier League. I was surprised at that. Joe Bellingham, Jude's younger brother, I was surprised to see that. And Tom Watson, I think that was a big loss. The heart of their midfield in the Championship has gone there. So that's a big loss for Sunderland. But like I said, they went out, they fixed it, they replaced them, they brought in top quality signings for the likes of Sunderland and giving themselves every chance of staying up. So for me, great business for Sunderland. Spurs. They took some heat, didn't they, off Eze? Lots of heat, lots of negative connotations and imagery and optics for Spurs. In all honesty, they've come away with a window similar to Newcastle, where they were kind of a laughingstock through this transfer window. Everyone was laughing at Spurs, everyone was laughing at Newcastle, but what they've ended up with isn't that bad at the end of it. In all honesty, Xavi Simons, a great signing. Mohamed Kudus, a great signing. You know, Paulinho, he's a powerhouse in that midfield. Didn't work out for him at Bayern Munich, but he's doing really well. He's already showcasing his worth already in the short time he's been at Spurs. A great signing, and considering that being, a 5 million loan fee? That's peanuts. Kolo Muani, I think that's a 50-50 one for me. I think that could be a genius signing. It could work. He could hit the ground running, score a bag full of goals, or he could flop. I really think he's got a proper fork in the road moment for Kolo Muani's career. I am not convinced, and I have no idea which way that's going to go. It could be I don't think it's going to go down the middle, this one. I think it's going to be a very good signing or a very bad signing, Kolo Muani. But still, Spurs, ultimately, Thomas Frank as well, albeit technically not part of the transfer window. The manager coming in, I think that's brought a bit of pulling power for Spurs, because I think Thomas Frank is a manager you do want to play for. I think the transfer policy at Spurs has been really good. They've sold okay. They've recouped €41 million and ended up with a net spend of €169 million, which is reasonably high, but getting €22 million for a 33-year-old Heung-min Son, that's a great bit of business, and as a result, I'm putting Spurs in the great business category. West Ham, I am worried about him. I think they're facing a relegation battle this season. To have a negative net spend of €54 million, and look at the players they've brought in. They've spent €143 million and they look arguably worse than they did last season. Kudus is a big loss. They could have pushed that fee up a little bit, because I think he's such a talent. I think he's a brilliant player, Kudus. I think they could have gone to 75, maybe even 80 for the likes of Kudus. I really believe that. And I think they undersold a little bit. And I think Spurs have got a good deal in that situation to the expense of West Ham. So they're going to be staring relegation in the face this season. They probably could blag their way into safety, considering the newly promoted sides will probably struggle more than the likes of West Ham, but they are pushing it fine. They are cutting it close. So for me, crap window for West Ham. Now, Wolves, similar to West Ham. I think this is a crap window for them. Coming away with a €2 million net spend isn't bad at all. Applying some context, they are obviously struggling with PSR, but I don't see that as an excuse, in all honesty, because I think that's a club management thing. Some agree with the rules, some don't agree with the rules. As a City fan, I totally disagree with the rules, even though we comply with them now because we managed to get ourselves floating above water. I still think this is a horrible situation for the clubs like Wolves, who have to sell the likes of Cunha and Ryan Aït-Nouri. Big talent. Strand Larsen coming in. I think that's a good bit of business to actually get that as a permanent deal for Wolves. But still, is it enough? Like West Ham, I think they're going to be staring relegation in the face. So for me, Wolves has to go down as a crap window, which rounds off the ranking of all of the Premier League transfer windows, which was focused on finances, sprinkling in, of course, not ignoring the footballing aspect, but what is your opinion? How do you rank your club in this category? Let me know your thoughts. Like and subscribe to Transfer News Live. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.